My husband beat me because I refused to live with his mother, and then he went off to relax, completely unbothered. In the morning, he brought me makeup and said, "My mother is coming over for lunch soon. Cover all that up and smile." Hours later, he left for the office, and when he walked into his boss's conference room, he turned pale when he saw me. Before we start, tell me in the comments what city you're listening from. I'd love to know how far this story has traveled. Now, get ready. What you're about to hear isn't just a novel. It's a mirror, and many might not be able to stand their own reflection. The first time Aaliyah Bancroft said no, her lip was split. The second time, her spirit was broken. Aaliyah was 32 years old. She loved morning coffee, books with open endings, and the silence right before everything explodes. She worked from home in a corner of the kitchen where she'd jury-rigged a small office with a borrowed laptop, a backless chair, and an aromatic candle that no longer smelled of anything, but gave her the illusion of having her own space. She was a quiet woman, reserved, one of those people who don't yell when they talk and give everything when they love. She lived with her husband Julian, a man who seemed educated, attentive, and even charming to outsiders. But when the door to their two-bedroom apartment closed, the story was entirely different. To him, love wasn't a partnership. It was ownership. It was obedience. Aaliyah had learned this through blows, though no one ever knew. That morning, the air in the house felt heavy and dense, as if something was about to give. "I won't allow it, Julian," Aaliyah said, her voice firm but her heart trembling. "I will not live with your mother." He turned from the doorway, his eyes blazing. "Excuse me? We already talked about this." "I don't want her in our house. She already does enough damage by weighing in on everything." Julian approached slowly. His steps echoed like a heartbeat on the hardwood floor. "My mother is not an option, Aaliyah. She's a part of my life. If you don't understand that, then you're out." She took a step back. She'd never seen him so tense. His fists were clenched. His jaw was hard. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm making things clear. I'm the man of this house, and if my mother comes to live with us, you will smile and welcome her." Aaliyah swallowed. For a moment, she thought about giving in, not out of fear, but out of sheer exhaustion. But her body couldn't take any more silence. She couldn't handle any more nights pretending everything was fine. No more. That no was the spark that ignited the inferno. Julian lunged at her without a second thought. No one screamed. No one stopped him. In that house, there were no witnesses, only walls that already knew how to keep secrets. Minutes later, the bathroom was silent. Aaliyah stood in front of the mirror, her face bloodied, her spirit shattered. With trembling hands, she opened the drawer and pulled out an old compact foundation. Tears escaped as she dabbed it over her face. "Don't cry. It'll run," she told herself, bitterly mocking her reflection. The door burst open. Julian walked in with a cup of coffee. "My mother is coming for lunch. Cover up well and smile." She didn't answer. She lowered her gaze, feeling the shame burn her skin like acid. He placed the mug on the counter and went to get dressed for work, whistling as if nothing had happened. The doorbell rang at noon. Amara had arrived. She was loaded down with shopping bags, strong perfume, and venomous comments. "And this is the food?" she asked disdainfully, looking at the served table. "This lacks flavor, honey. In my day, women knew how to cook." Aaliyah swallowed her rage. "I hope you like it," she said, forcing a smile, while an invisible tear ran down her soul. During lunch, Amara criticized the decor, the tablecloth, the silverware, and even the way Aaliyah chewed. Julian listened, nodding. Not once did he defend her. It was as if he enjoyed watching his mother slowly tear her apart. When the visit ended, Julian tied his necktie in front of the mirror and tossed out one final order. "I'm heading out. I'll be at the office late. Don't leave. Don't answer calls. I don't want any trouble." He walked out the door as if he hadn't just broken everything he touched. As soon as she heard the car engine pull away, Aaliyah grabbed her phone. She dialed a number she'd saved long ago, one she never thought she'd use. Her voice was low, but resolute. "Is everything ready?" From the other side, a man's voice replied, "Everything is going according to plan. We're waiting for you." She hung up without another word. She took a deep breath, changed her clothes, wiped off the remaining makeup, tucked some papers into her purse, and left. Hours later, Julian arrived at his office. He walked in, greeting everyone with his usual smile, shaking hands, cracking forced jokes, and pretending everything was normal. He took the elevator up to the executive floor, unaware that his world was about to crumble. "The new owner has arrived," a secretary said without looking up. "She's in the main conference room." Julian quickened his pace. No one had told him about such a major change. A new owner? Who had approved this? He opened the door and froze. There, sitting at the head of the long mahogany table, was Aaliyah. Impeccable, elegant, serene. She looked at him with a calm that chilled his blood. "Hello, Julian." He gasped for air. What are you doing here?" She stood up and walked toward him, never taking her eyes off his. "Let me introduce you to the new CEO of the company, the official heiress, the woman who was afraid yesterday and who holds all the power today." The directors murmured among themselves. Some looked at him with pity, others with mockery. Julian took a step back. "You planned all this?" Aaliyah smiled, but this time not out of obligation or fear. She smiled because, for the first time in a long time, she was doing it without anyone's permission. "This is just the beginning." As Julian struggled to grasp the impossible, Aaliyah took her seat, crossed her legs with grace, and calmly started the meeting. It was as if she hadn't just changed everything, because sometimes the most dangerous thing a broken woman can have is accumulated silence and a chance to speak. The conference room filled with a thick silence, as if the air had been replaced by something denser: fear, anger, disbelief. Julian could barely stand up straight. Sweat ran down his temples while Aaliyah, unperturbed, continued the meeting as if nothing extraordinary had happened. She spoke clearly, with an elegant tone, without needing to raise her voice. She offered no explanations. She didn't justify her presence. She simply assumed power as if it had always belonged to her. The executives exchanged tense glances. Some pretended to take notes, others disguised their uncomfortable surprise. A couple of them, who knew more than they let on, nervously swallowed. Julian sat down in an isolated chair without asking permission. His body was there, but his mind was still trapped in that image. Aaliyah, sitting on the throne of his father's company, transformed into something he never imagined: a threat. When the meeting ended, she stood up slowly, closed her file, and left without looking at anyone. Not a word directed at Julian, not a glance. She walked down the hallway as if she knew exactly where she was going, as if she had walked that path 1,000 times, though this was the first time she had ever set foot in the building with her name on the official documents. The rumors spread like a wildfire in dry grass. How did that woman get here? Wasn't she Julian's wife? Now she's his boss, and they say she inherited everything from the previous owner. Is it true? I heard the founder's family kept her hidden, and what if she was the old man's mistress? The voices multiplied, the intrigue grew, but Aaliyah didn't respond. Her silence was more feared than any statement, and that was the most unsettling thing to many. Meanwhile, Julian wandered the office like a ghost. No one greeted him as before. The respect had vanished, and when he tried to regain control at the next day's meeting, his chair was occupied by someone else. He returned home at night looking for comfort, but only his mother, Amara, was waiting for him, sitting in the dark with a glass in her hand. "What did you do?" she asked without looking at him. "Nothing," he replied, dropping the keys on the table. "Don't lie to me, Julian. I heard about the company. How can that woman be sitting in your father's place? She's not just that woman. She's my wife. Or was. And how did she become your boss?" Julian collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted. His eyes showed something Amara wasn't used to seeing in her son: defeat. "I don't know. I swear I don't know. She was home this morning, and now she controls everything. I don't know how she did it." "Then find out," Amara hissed. "Because if you don't take back what belongs to you, I will." Aaliyah, on the other hand, locked herself in her office, surrounded by files, records, and new faces. There was a lot to clean up, too much to discover. The company, which had been in corrupt hands for years, was a minefield. Every corner held a secret, every desk hid a conflict, and she knew it. She could smell it in the air. She called a private meeting with Human Resources. She reviewed the contracts, the promotions, and the unjustified dismissals one by one. In 3 days, she fired 5 managers who had spent years sabotaging the projects of honest employees. Her hand didn't tremble when she signed the papers. She knew honest people needed space to breathe. "I didn't come here to destroy this company," she said in her first internal address. "I came to clean it, to heal it, like a wound that hurts at first, but eventually heals." The words were recorded and went viral in employee group chats. Many began to admire her in secret. Others hated her quietly. But everyone knew one thing: Aaliyah was here to stay. Meanwhile, Julian tried to find flaws. He called lawyers and investigated the inheritance documents. None of them found anything irregular. Everything was legal, impossibly legal, as if it had all been prepared years in advance. And that drove him mad because it meant Aaliyah hadn't reacted overnight. She had planned it, patiently, like someone preparing a storm and waiting for the exact moment to let loose the first crack of thunder. That night, Julian waited for her outside the building. "I need to talk to you." She looked at him for a second without stopping. "Aaliyah, please, not everything was a lie." She stopped. She looked at him with something that wasn't hate. It was pity, a cold pity that cut deeper than contempt. "Everything was a lie, Julian. From the first I love you to the last punch. You didn't mean to hurt me. And yet you did every time you silenced me, every time you made me doubt myself, every time you forced me to cover up the pain." "I can change. I don't want you to change. I want you to walk away." Julian tried to take her hand, but she firmly backed away. "No more," she said. "You don't have permission anymore." Upon returning to her office, a new assistant was waiting. She was young, thin, with deep circles under her eyes and trembling hands. "I'm Layla. Human Resources assigned me to help with your schedule." Aaliyah looked at her carefully. There was something familiar in her eyes, the same contained fear she knew well. "First time in a role like this?" "Yes," Layla replied, looking down. "I worked in other offices, but never for very long." During lunch, while everyone talked amongst themselves, Layla sat alone in a corner. She didn't eat, she didn't speak, she just held her notebook as if it were a life raft. Hours later, during a presentation, Layla fainted in front of everyone. "Call somebody!" an employee shouted. Aaliyah rushed over, took her hand, and asked for space. Seeing that no one was helping, she carried Layla to the nurse's station herself. "I'm fine," Layla whispered when she came to. "I just didn't eat breakfast." Aaliyah offered her water, stroked her hair like a little sister, and quietly said something Layla didn't expect. No one should fall without someone there to pick them up. Layla looked at her with eyes full of unshed tears. She didn't say anything more. When the day ended, Aaliyah reviewed the reports and found something strange. There was a blocked, classified file under her name. She requested it from the confidential archives. They told her she would have to wait 24 hours. That night, arriving home, she found an envelope on the table. It had no sender, just her name written by hand. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a sentence written in black ink with shaky handwriting. "Your mother isn't dead." For a moment the world stopped spinning. Aaliyah felt a chill run down her arms. She looked around as if someone might be watching her. Her heart began to race. That envelope hadn't been left by anyone from the company. There was no way. It was personal, intimate. "Your mother isn't dead." The phrase bored into her mind. She'd always been told her mother died giving birth to her. Even the nuns at the St. Mary's Charity Home where she grew up had confirmed it. But now, what if it was all a lie? She sat down slowly, as if the weight of the paper was too much, and for the first time since she took power, Aaliyah felt fear. Not fear of losing what she'd gained, but of discovering what had been stolen from her before she even knew it existed. Because if her mother was alive, someone had silenced her. And in that story, the names began to repeat. Julian, Amara, and someone else. Someone who hadn't yet shown their face, but was undoubtedly watching, waiting. The mask of power had begun to fall, and what lay beneath was just beginning to reveal itself. Aaliyah left the letter on the table, as if it burned. The phrase floated in the air like thick smoke. "Your mother isn't dead." She didn't know who had written it, but the handwriting had something familiar about it, something that shook her soul. She spent the night awake, staring at the closed envelope, wondering if everything she had believed was a lie. She remembered the nuns, the cold nights in the home, the vague answers, the evasive looks when she asked about her mother. There were never any photos, never a name, just a story repeated so many times that it eventually seemed true. The next morning, she went directly to the company's legal archive. She had total access as the CEO, but some documents required special authorization, and this was one of them. "I need file 94HL2, she told the archivist, an older man who lowered his eyes when he heard the name. "It's registered under Arthur Bancroft from over 20 years ago. That's sealed by court order. It can only be opened with a direct order from the board." Aaliyah placed both hands on the desk. "I'm the chairman of the board." The man hesitated for a few seconds before handing her the folder. It was covered in dust, as if no one had touched it in decades. The cover was marked with red ink, "Confidential." She read every page slowly. When she reached the second inner envelope, sealed with wax, she tore it open without hesitation. Inside were papers signed by her adoptive father, Arthur Bancroft, detailing the irregular adoption of a child under ecclesiastical custody. The most disturbing details were not the legal ones, but an attached medical report suggesting that the biological mother had been institutionalized in a psychiatric hospital after suffering an emotional collapse following the forced loss of her daughter. Aaliyah felt the ground shift beneath her. There were names, signatures, and addresses. One in particular caught her attention. Claire Dubois, the nurse responsible for the case at St. Jude's Medical Center. She wasted no time, leaving in silence. She didn't mention anything to the team. No one should know yet. That same afternoon, at a modest house on the outskirts of the city, she knocked on the door with her heart pounding in her throat. A woman in her 70s with weathered skin and a serious face opened it. Claire Dubois. The woman observed her for several seconds before speaking. "You're her, aren't you?" Aaliyah didn't know what to say. "Her who?" The woman opened the door without another word. "Come in." Inside, the smell of camphor and medicine filled the air. Crucifixes and old photographs hung on the walls. Claire invited her to sit down. Then she stood, as if struggling to accept what she was about to say. "You were a baby the last time I saw you. They tore you from the arms of a woman who was screaming your name like her soul was leaving her body. I didn't know what to do. I was threatened. I was paid to keep silent." "Who threatened you?" The woman pressed her lips together. She didn't answer immediately. She walked to a drawer, pulled out a small envelope, and handed it to her. "I kept this all these years. I don't know why. Maybe I knew that one day someone would come looking for it." Inside was an old photograph, a young woman with dark hair embracing a baby. On the back was a date, written in pencil. Aaliyah stared at the image as if it were a distorted mirror. "She's my mother." Claire nodded. "Her name was Teresa. Well, that's what she said before they took her away. They said she was crazy, but she wasn't. She was just broken with grief." Aaliyah carefully put the photo away. She refused to cry. Not there. She left the house as if the air was suffocating her. Her mother was alive, or at least had been alive after her birth. Where was she now? Who had ordered her confinement? The answer took shape in her mind with a name that hurt to pronounce: Amara. Meanwhile, Julian was living through his own storm. The demotion at the company had been only the beginning. The contempt in the hallways, the looks from employees, the change in attitude from those who had once feared him. Now he was a cipher, a phantom, a last name without power. He started drinking more than usual, sleeping on the sofa, and getting lost for hours. He didn't answer calls. His mother pressured him daily with demands and accusations. "You can't let that woman humiliate us like this. You're a Julian by blood. She's a nobody." "I don't have control anymore," he replied, sinking deeper. "Then act, investigate, find something to destroy her." "Why don't you do it?" Julian asked with contained rage. "What is it that you know that you don't want to tell me?" Amara slowly turned, as if those words had opened an old wound. "There are things you don't understand, son." "Then explain them to me." "Because she's winning, and you look more scared than furious." Amara didn't respond. She left the room and left him alone with his paranoia. That night, Julian didn't sleep. He paced back and forth, his eyes bloodshot, his thoughts clouded. He started hearing noises, seeing shadows. At one point, he thought he saw Aaliyah watching him from the yard. He ran outside, but there was no one there. His mind was starting to unravel. The next day, Aaliyah arrived at the company with a tougher expression than usual. Layla was waiting for her in the office with the day's report. "Did you sleep well?" the young woman asked timidly. "No." Layla hesitated, then took a deep breath. "There's something I didn't tell you." Aaliyah looked at her attentively. "I'm listening." "Before I got here, I was in places that weren't offices. I was taken out of school when I was 13 years old. My mother sold me. I went through houses where I was treated like property. I escaped. I changed my name, but I still feel like there are invisible chains." Aaliyah felt a knot in her throat. She walked over to her and touched her arm. "You're not in that place anymore. Here, you're going to grow. No one is going to use you again." Layla nodded, holding back tears. "Thank you for giving me a chance." "I was an invisible girl too," Aaliyah said, "and now I'm visible so that others can be too." Hours later, as she was signing documents in her office, someone knocked on the door. "Excuse me," the security guard said. "There's a little boy outside asking to see you. He says his name is Miles. He's all alone." Aaliyah frowned. She went out immediately. In front of the building, next to a planter, was a boy about 7 years old, with messy hair and enormous eyes. When he saw her, he smiled and held out his arms. "Mommy!" Aaliyah froze. She knelt in front of him. "What did you say?" "You're my mommy. I see you in my dreams, and my grandma told me I would find you one day." "Who is your grandma?" The boy pulled a crumpled sheet of paper from his pocket. A child's drawing with a long-haired woman and a gigantic heart. "She told me this was you, that you weren't dead." Aaliyah looked at the guard. "Where did he come from?" "An older man brought him. He said he would return later. He wouldn't give his name." The boy hugged her tightly. His heart beat against Aaliyah's chest as if he had found a home. But she didn't understand. Who was this child? Why did he say he was her son? They took him to the building's reception area, where he was put under care. But Aaliyah couldn't stop thinking about him. That evening, she returned to her house. She opened the folder with the latest documents from the archive. One of them fell to the floor as she took it out. Picking it up, she noticed a photograph attached with a paper clip. The image showed a woman kneeling, her face covered in tears. In front of her, a familiar figure held a baby. The face was younger, but unmistakable. Amara. A chill ran through her body like a violent whisper. There she was, with the baby in her arms, while another woman implored, wept, and crawled on the floor. That woman was her mother, and Amara had separated her from her. Aaliyah dropped the photo. For the first time in days, she didn't know what to do. Who was Amara really? What kind of crime had she hidden for so many years? The answer was hidden in the threads that had tied her down since childhood, and now, one by one, they were beginning to snap. But not without noise, not without consequences. Because when you pull a thread that has held a lie together for decades, the entire fabric begins to collapse, and what is revealed can be more painful than silence. Aaliyah stared at the photo for long minutes. Tears streamed down her face, silent, as if her body knew what her mind hadn't yet dared to accept. In that image was the story they had always hidden from her. Her mother, kneeling and pleading, and in front of her, Amara, with a twisted smile and a baby in her arms. That baby was her. That image was more than proof. It was a sentence. The air in the room seemed to have stopped. Aaliyah tried to take a deep breath, but something in her chest wouldn't allow it. Everything inside her trembled, not just from the discovery, but from the contained rage, from the years of lies, from every night alone in that charity home, from every time she wondered why no one had come looking for her. She picked up the phone with trembling hands and dialed Julian's number. "Aaliyah?" he answered, surprised. "I need to see you now, in my office, in 20 minutes. Don't be late." She hung up without giving him time to respond. When Julian walked in, he found Aaliyah standing with the photo on her desk. There was no greeting, no courtesy, just an icy look that forced him to close his mouth. "Does this look familiar to you?" He looked at the image, and his face changed completely. He didn't ask what it was. He didn't pretend to be surprised. He looked down like a child caught in a lie that was far too old. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked without raising her voice. "How long have you known the truth?" Julian didn't answer. He clenched his fists, unable to hold her gaze. "From the beginning, Aaliyah. I knew from the very beginning. My mother asked me not to say anything." "Of course she did. Because to both of you, I was nobody. I was just a tool, something you could mold, someone with no past, no history. That's not how it was. Then how was it? Did you love me? And yet you kept silent while your mother destroyed mine? I didn't know everything, only parts. I found out after we were married. And you didn't say anything." "I was afraid of losing you," Julian murmured, and for the first time he seemed sincere. "You knew I wasn't anyone to you, but you were afraid that one day I would be more than you." The phrase cut through him like a knife. There were no shouts, no argument, just that truth spoken in a quiet voice. Julian left without another word. He knew he had lost everything. That night, Aaliyah didn't return home. She checked into a hotel far from the company, far from everyone. Insomnia kept her company like a shadow, and when she finally closed her eyes, she didn't rest. She dreamed of her mother, of that image, of the echo of a cry that wasn't hers, but felt like her own. The next day, Layla found her pale, with sunken eyes. "You haven't eaten anything," she said softly. "I'm not hungry." "You're going to get sick." Aaliyah didn't reply. Layla closed the file in her hands and sat in front of her. "You saved me when no one else saw me, and now that you're like this, I feel like I don't know how to help." Aaliyah looked at her for the first time in hours. "No one can help me. I have to do it alone." Layla hesitated. Then, in a low voice, she added, "I thought that too, until you arrived." Those words didn't cure anything, but they offered some warmth, a reminder that in the midst of so much darkness, something different could still be sown. Hours later, Aaliyah made a decision. She reviewed the documents in the file she still hadn't finished reading. On one of the last pages, a name appeared that she hadn't noticed: Elias Fountain, biological father, status, missing. She investigated, searched official records. Nothing. He had been erased from the map, as if he had never existed. But then, among the hospital papers, she found a handwritten note, undated. Detected in marginalized areas of the West End district. Refused medical attention in a state of homelessness. Without a second thought, she went to the district. She walked through alleys, asked at community kitchens, and showed an old photo found in the file. Many ignored her. Others knew nothing, until a woman with a raspy accent pointed with her chin toward a bench. "That one over there is Elias. Sometimes he babbles, says he lost a daughter." Aaliyah approached with slow steps. A man covered in old blankets, with a long beard and a dull gaze, was watching birds eat crumbs. "Elias Fountain." The man didn't respond or look at her. "Elias, are you from the courthouse?" he suddenly asked in a worn voice. "No, I'm Aaliyah Bancroft." The man slowly turned, his eyes filled with tears before his face could process it. "Aaliyah," he whispered, "my baby girl." She froze. "You know me?" "I searched for you all these years. Your mother, she fought so hard for you." "Where is she?" "She's alive, but I don't know how she is now. The last time I saw her, she couldn't remember me." Aaliyah sat down next to him. For minutes, they said nothing, just sharing the silence of those who have been mutilated by time. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" she finally asked. "Because your mother's family hated her. They said she was a disgrace. They were ashamed of me for being poor. They wanted to erase me, and they succeeded. They threw me onto the street, they locked her up, and they took you away as if you were a piece of trash." The tears were no longer hidden. They fell without resistance. He awkwardly took her hand. "I'm sorry, I couldn't save you." "It wasn't your fault," she murmured. "Now I want to find her." She returned to the company with a single idea in her head: to go to the psychiatric hospital. She confirmed the name, Willow Creek Center. Teresa had been institutionalized there for years, according to reports, suffering from dementia. No one visited her. No family member was registered. Upon arriving, the place looked like a disguised prison. Gray walls, locked doors, indifferent staff. "Who are you looking for?" "Teresa." "I'm her daughter." The nurse looked up, surprised. "She doesn't get visitors." "She does now." They took her to a small room. There, sitting in a wheelchair, with a vacant gaze, was her mother. White hair, dull eyes. She seemed distant, as if her mind floated in a place no one else had access to. Aaliyah walked closer. "Mom?" The woman looked at her but didn't recognize her. "You're new. Are you going to bring me tea?" "I'm your daughter, Mom. I'm Aaliyah." "Aaliyah," she repeated in a flat voice. "What a pretty name." Aaliyah knelt in front of her. "I'm here. No one is going to separate us again. No one is going to hurt you again." The woman extended a trembling hand and touched her cheek. She smiled for an instant. Then she returned her gaze to the window as if the moment had only been an echo. Aaliyah hugged her tightly, tenderly. She felt something break inside her. It wasn't sadness. It was liberation. It was the wound closing, not because everything was fine, but because she wasn't alone anymore. "Don't worry," she whispered. "Now I'll take care of you." And in that embrace, the victim stopped being a daughter and became a mother, a refuge, a living justice. The truth cannot be covered up. It can be hidden. It can be disguised. But one day it inevitably returns to look you in the face, and when it does, it demands to be spoken, even if it hurts, even if it burns, even if it destroys everything that seemed firm. Because only from that destruction can something new be born, something that no longer needs lies to sustain itself. Only the truth, however cruel, however necessary. Aaliyah returned home with a tense body and an exhausted spirit. She still smelled her mother's perfume on her clothes, a mix of aged lavender and despair. Her hands were shaking, not from weakness, but from contained fury. She showered without turning on the light, as if she needed to erase every trace of the past before continuing with what was to come. She didn't want compassion or pity. She wanted justice, not in courtrooms, not with lawyers. She wanted to expose the truth, to show the open wound, to let the world see the face of the person who had destroyed so many lives from the comfort of their privilege. And for that, there was an exact date, the company's annual benefit gala. Ironically, it had been Amara's idea, a luxurious evening with live music, public donations, and cameras broadcasting live. Amara wanted to clean up her image, reposition herself as a philanthropist, an exemplary mother, as the woman who had helped raise Aaliyah. She even said so in the invitation, with a hypocritical smile and open arms, like someone trying to redeem herself without paying the price. Aaliyah accepted immediately, but not to honor her, and certainly not to thank her. She was going to use Amara's own stage to strip her bare in front of everyone, not with shouts, not with hatred, but with evidence. Meanwhile, Julian was sinking. The demotion at the company had been only the beginning. The contempt in the hallways, the looks from employees, the changed attitude of those who once feared him. Now he was nothing. A shadow, a name without power. He started drinking more than usual, sleeping on the sofa, and disappearing for hours. He didn't answer calls. His mother pressured him with demands and complaints, but he no longer had answers, not even for himself. One night, he showed up at Aaliyah's house. The door was locked, but he knocked hard. When she opened it, she found him stumbling, drunk, hollow-eyed, broken. "I need to talk to you," he slurred. She hesitated for a few seconds, then stepped aside, not out of compassion, but strategy. 5 minutes. He sat on the sofa, the same one that had once witnessed arguments, silences, and lies. "I loved you, in my own way," Julian said, his voice slow. "Everything I learned about love, I learned from her. Then you learned to use, to manipulate, to control. I'm not justifying anything. I just want you to know that I did love you." Aaliyah looked at him for a long time. "You don't know what love means, Julian. Love isn't imposing. It isn't silencing truths. It isn't choosing the comfort of a lie when someone next to you is dying inside." "And I didn't know how to protect you," he said, his eyes glassy. "Because you never wanted to. Don't confuse it. You weren't incapable. You were just a coward." Julian dropped his head. He remained there in silence, then got up and walked to the door. Before leaving, he mumbled without looking back, "I hope you can forgive me someday, although I wouldn't." Aaliyah closed the door and took a deep breath. What she felt was no longer hate. It was a kind of bitter indifference, like when a wound stops hurting because the bleeding no longer matters. The next day, she received an unexpected call from Layla. Her voice sounded different, shaky, hopeful. "Aaliyah, I think I found my son." Aaliyah dropped everything and went with her. They drove together to a house in the suburbs. A woman received them at the entrance. She didn't give her name, only asked them to come in quietly. In a small room, with a makeshift bed and used toys, a 5-year-old boy was drawing with crayons. When Layla saw him, her world stopped. Her heart pounded against her chest as if it would break. She walked slowly, knelt in front of him, and whispered, "Miles." The boy looked up, recognized her without words, and ran into her arms. Layla broke down, screaming and crying as she never had before. From the doorway, Aaliyah felt that something in the universe was being repaired, as if an old crack had finally closed. They returned to the city together, and Aaliyah gave Layla a permanent job in the company's social outreach department. Her mission would now be to help other women who, like her, had been silenced and torn from what they loved most. That night, Aaliyah felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. She doubled over in the kitchen, clinging to the edge of the counter. She had told herself too many times that everything was fine, that it was just stress, that it would pass. But it didn't. She went to the doctor in secret. They ran tests. She waited for the results alone, her hands ice cold on her lap. The diagnosis arrived without anesthesia. Cancer, early stage. "It hasn't metastasized, but we need to act now." She didn't cry. She didn't ask how much time she had. She only thought of her mother, Layla, and everything that still needed to be done. "I won't tell anyone," she told the doctor. "Not yet. You'll need emotional and physical support. First, I have to close something out." She left with the papers in her purse. No one knew what was happening. Not Layla, not Elias, no one. The gala arrived on the appointed date. The theater was packed, dim lights, soft music, the press at the entrance. Everyone was talking about Amara Julian's new philanthropic era. No one suspected what was about to happen. Aaliyah arrived dressed in white, radiant, serious. She walked the red carpet without smiling. She sat at the main table. Amara took the stage shortly after. She spoke of values, family, and social justice. Her words sounded empty, rehearsed, surrounded by bought applause. "And I want to especially thank my dear Aaliyah for moving past any resentment and honoring me with her presence," Amara announced. "Not all families are perfect, but forgiveness is the true sign of growth." Aaliyah stood up, took the microphone, and her voice didn't tremble. "Thank you for your words, Amara. And since we're talking about growth, I'd like to share a testimony." She signaled to the sound technician. The screens on the stage lit up. An old video appeared, hidden camera footage. The image was blurry but clear. Amara, younger, sat in front of a desk. "I don't want that woman to ever go near the child again. Understand me clearly. If necessary, institutionalize her. I'll sign whatever it takes, but I don't want to see her again. That child will never know where she came from," a voice that sounded like Amara's stated. "And if she asks about her mother?" A male voice off camera inquired. "Make something up. That she died, that she abandoned her. It doesn't matter. That child is mine now." The video stopped. Amara was pale. She clutched her chest. She muttered something no one understood. Some thought she was faking. Others thought she would collapse. Aaliyah looked at the crowd. That child was me, and that woman who was made to disappear was my mother. She was institutionalized by order of Mrs. Amara Julian, not for mental illness, but for revenge, for hatred, for power. The silence was replaced by murmurs. Some attendees stood up, others filmed. The live broadcast continued. Social media was ablaze. "For years, I lived believing I was an orphan, that I wasn't worth anything, that I should be grateful for the little I had. Today, the truth is out, and the truth cannot be covered up." She put down the microphone, stepped off the stage, and didn't look at Amara. She wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing her beg. That night, the entire country talked about Aaliyah, the recording, and the lie that crumbled before millions. But what no one knew, what was still buried beneath all that noise, was the most dangerous thing. What wasn't said. Because when a powerful woman loses control, she doesn't always fall. Sometimes she attacks. And the question was no longer whether Amara was finished. The question was how far she was willing to go now that she had lost everything. Amara Julian had built her world on foundations of fear, lies, and manipulation. And now, seeing everything collapse in front of the cameras, she wasn't thinking about surrendering. She was thinking about revenge. She didn't believe in remorse. She had no room for guilt. All she had left was poison, and she would use it. After the gala, she disappeared for nearly 48 hours. Her mansion was empty, her staff abandoned her, and authorities began searching for her with a warrant for aggravated concealment, document forgery, and complicity in unlawful confinement. No one knew if she had crossed the border, if she was hiding, or if someone was protecting her from the inside. Aaliyah did not celebrate Amara's public downfall. There was no peace on her face, only a deep exhaustion, one she couldn't hide. Each day was a battle between rage and fear, between duty and fatigue. The illness advanced stealthily while she pretended to be strong in front of everyone. Layla became her shield. She organized schedules, meetings, and press releases, and she also protected her from the journalists who waited day and night outside the company. Some yelled aggressive questions, others begged for exclusive interviews. One segment of the press treated her like a hero. Another like an opportunist. No one truly knew who Aaliyah was, and that made her stronger. But the cameras didn't know that at night, Aaliyah vomited blood in the sink, that she could barely sleep, that her ribs hurt with every breath. No one knew that her hair was falling out in clumps and that she wore a wig under her scarves. They also didn't know that the doctor had told her the cancer was advancing faster than expected. She knew it, but she didn't have time to stop. Not until everything was clear. Not until Amara paid. On the third day after the gala, Amara was captured at a private airfield. She had attempted to leave the country with false documents. In her suitcase were luxury watches, jewelry, an obscene amount of cash, and a note with the names of corrupt political contacts. She was arrested without resistance, wearing makeup as if she were going to a dinner party with a frozen smile. To the cameras, she only said one phrase, "I did everything for my son. She was never worthy of him." That cry was broadcast across the news, and indignation grew on social media. There were those who condemned her, and those who, incredibly, justified her. People who saw her as a protective mother, a victim of a generation that no longer understood family as it once did. Aaliyah did not respond to any statement, gave no interviews. She didn't want anyone to speak for her. What she had to say, she had already said on the stage. Now, justice had to act. Days later, with the trial in preparation, Aaliyah took a car and went alone to the charity home where she had grown up. She wanted answers, but she also wanted to say goodbye to what had been, what had shaped her, what had broken her. The nuns received her nervously. Some looked at her with compassion, others with suspicion. The Mother Superior took her to the small chapel where Aaliyah had spent her afternoons as a child, dreaming of an imaginary mother and a family that loved her. She sat on the same wooden bench, facing the same stained glass window. This time, she didn't pray. She just closed her eyes and listened to the silence. A different silence than before. It was no longer the silence of abandonment. It was the silence of rebuilding. As she left, one of the older nuns, with slow steps and a clear gaze, handed her an envelope. "He came a few days ago. He said he was your father. He knew you would return." Aaliyah took the envelope without saying anything. She got back in the car and opened it there. It was a letter written with shaky handwriting. Elias, her real father. "My daughter, when you read this, I may no longer be here. But I am not writing to say goodbye. I am writing to thank you for having forgiven me with your eyes, even though you said nothing, for having hugged your mother, even though she couldn't recognize you, for not becoming what they made you. There are people who pass through life leaving wounds. You pass through life healing them. Even if you don't know it, even if you sometimes think you are just surviving, you heal, like things that truly hurt do." The letter trembled in her hands. She cried in the car without witnesses. Not for him, not for what wasn't. She cried for everything she never had, for everything that still hurt, for every part of herself that had been silenced and finally had a voice today. That night, Layla prepared her a hot soup. She saw Aaliyah arrive with a strained expression. "Where were you?" "At the home. He died." Layla didn't ask more. She just sat beside her. There was no need to talk, only to be present. Amara's trial was set for 3 weeks later. Aaliyah did not plan to attend every hearing. She wanted justice to do its work without turning it into a spectacle. But something changed her plans. At midnight, a call woke her up. The number was blocked. She answered with a sleepy voice. "Aaliyah, it's me," Julian said. His voice sounded desperate, broken. "What are you doing calling this late?" "Forgive me. I don't know how to tell you this. I need to see you. It's urgent." "Tell me. What's wrong?" "I'm outside. Don't hang up." He hung up before she could respond. Aaliyah got up, put on a robe, and went to the door. She saw him from the window. He was standing next to the car with something wrapped in his arms. She opened the door slowly. "What is that?" He was trembling. "It's Miles." Aaliyah felt her heart stop. "What did you do to him?" "Nothing. I didn't hurt him. I just wanted to leave with him. Go far away. Start over. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. I couldn't walk away." The boy was sleeping, wrapped in a blanket. "Give him to me," she ordered. Julian obeyed. With clumsy hands, he handed the boy over. "I didn't know what else to do. No one wants me. You hate me. My mother is in jail. My father died without saying goodbye, and I'm empty." "You chose to be alone," she replied. He fell to his knees, crying, hitting the ground. He was a man destroyed by his own reflection. "I just wanted someone to look at me without contempt." "That boy doesn't need a father like you," Aaliyah said with a calmness that shattered him. "He needs a mother who no longer has to cover up her pain." And she closed the door. That was the last time she saw Julian. Layla woke up from the noise. Seeing Aaliyah with Miles in her arms, she understood everything. She hugged them both. She cried in silence. Then she took him to her room, tucked him in, and sat beside him. Aaliyah looked at the sky through the window. Dawn was already breaking. The trial was beginning that very day, but she already had the most important sentence, her own. Legal justice is served, but justice for the soul is only achieved when one dares to face what always hurt and decides not to repeat it, not to perpetuate it, not to inherit the damage. Because there are wounds that are inherited, but there is also courage that is transmitted. And Aaliyah was ready to close the cycle, even if it cost her her life, even if it hurt more than everything before. She was ready for what was to come because there was nothing left to hide, no more price to pay. The silence was over, and the voice of all those who could never speak was finally being heard. Amara Julian's trial became one of the most covered in the country. Each testimony was a stab against the image of an exemplary mother she had built for decades. The lawyers tried to deflect the focus, alleging senile dementia, emotional blackmail, and pressure from third parties, but the recording, the documents, and the declarations of direct witnesses were irrefutable. She was convicted on multiple charges, including identity fraud, aggravated unlawful confinement, and abuse of power. She showed no remorse. She didn't even cry. She walked out in handcuffs with her head held high, still convinced she had done the right thing. The press waited for Aaliyah outside the courthouse, but they didn't find her. She didn't attend the final hearing. She was in the hospital, receiving the last round of chemotherapy. Her body ached, her skin burned, her hair was nothing more than a memory, but inside she was clean. The poison was gone, not the cancers. The other, deeper poison, the one called fear. Years passed. 3, then 5. The city changed, and so did the company. Aaliyah was no longer spoken of as a broken woman. Now she was named as a symbol, a survivor, a reference point for truth. She didn't give commercial interviews or sell out to any media outlet. What she shared, she did on her own terms, through the Without Fear Foundation she had created with Layla. Layla became a pillar, taking the reins of social work, expanding the foundation to other states, rescuing dozens of women trapped in networks of abuse and exploitation. Miles, her son, grew up surrounded by conversations, affection, and books. Aaliyah gave him the middle name of her biological father, Elias, as an act of symbolic repair. Aaliyah's mother, Teresa, passed away peacefully. Her last days were spent at home with her daughter, recognizing her in small flashes of lucidity that were enough to make every word worth gold. Before she died, she gripped Aaliyah's hand tightly and whispered something Aaliyah would never forget. "You were my longest fight and my sweetest victory." When she was buried, there were no long speeches, only white flowers, a soft song, and the dignified silence of someone who was never allowed to speak on time. Julian did not reappear publicly. He was admitted to a psychiatric facility after several episodes of self-harm. He had no visitors, didn't respond to his name. He walked the hallways with a bewildered gaze. They called him by a number. He lived among childhood drawings and questions no one answered. Aaliyah was notified by protocol. She chose not to see him, but she sent a book, the only one she wrote with her own story. That book changed lives. The first edition sold out in weeks. It wasn't a self-help book. It was a raw, honest testimony with real names and undisguised emotions. She didn't ask for pity. She didn't justify anyone. She spoke of wounds, memory, women who love, who stay silent, who resist, and what happens when they stop being silent. "No makeup can cover the silence," was one of the first sentences. "No blow can defeat a woman determined to live without fear." That phrase became a banner, a tattoo, a motto. Women from different countries began to write to her, sending letters, messages, photos with the book in their hands. Some read it in prisons, others in shelters, some in a courthouse waiting room before reporting abuse for the first time. Aaliyah never expected fame or wanted recognition, but the universe had other plans. She was invited to give conferences and large talks, some at universities, others in forgotten neighborhoods. She always said the same thing before starting. "My story is not the hardest or the most tragic. It's just a story that was lucky enough to find a voice in time. There are others who aren't so lucky, and it is for them that I keep speaking." At one of those conferences, at the end of the presentation, a woman approached with a teenager by her side. He had large eyes and a serene gaze. The boy didn't speak. He just watched her intently. "He remembers you. He says you hugged him once at the entrance of your office." Aaliyah looked at him closely. He nodded slightly. Then he wrote something in a small notebook hanging from his neck. He showed her the page. In crooked letters, it said, "You taught me not to be quiet." She felt a knot in her throat. She knelt down, hugged him, and whispered, "Then it was all worth it." Leaving the conference, she took a deep breath. The night was cool. The city seemed different, less hostile. Maybe it was just her who had changed. She walked home alone, without bodyguards, without a driver. She climbed the stairs calmly, turned on the living room light. Everything was quiet. She poured herself some tea, took off her shoes, and went to the bathroom. She stopped in front of the mirror. She observed her reflection carefully. She no longer wore a wig. Her hair was growing back, slow, curly, and wild. The marks of the treatment were still on her skin. They weren't scars. They were medals. She touched her face. There was no makeup, no blush, no foundation, no shadow. Just her. For the first time in a long time, she smiled. Not out of obligation, not out of protocol, not because someone asked her to. She smiled because she was no longer afraid, because now she knew who she was and what she was, and she didn't need to wear a disguise anymore. What did you think of this story? There are many people, like Aaliyah Bancroft, living silent battles every day. Our hope is that her voice has resonated within you too. If this story touched your heart, share it. Let more people feel accompanied. Be part of the change. Tell us in the comments what you would have done in her place and what city you are watching from. Reading your words makes us feel closer to you. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Every action you take is a sign that these stories must continue to be told. Don't go yet. Our next moving story is already appearing on your screen. Click on any of them and continue exploring this universe of real, moving, and necessary stories. Thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling with us. We send you a huge hug, wherever you are. See you in the next one. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.